Eighth grade Ravens. In language arts this year, we're going to look at the question, what is a warrior? Robert Eagle Staff Middle School is a community defined by warriors. Our walls are graced with historical warriors. Chief Self, Chief Joseph, Geronimo, and Sitting Bull all fought for justice for their communities. All protected those who could not protect themselves. All fought for the future of their people. So, warriors are people who fight for their communities. They fight for social justice. We hope you will become warriors. In our next unit, a book group unit, we're going to look at the themes of facing challenges, finding courage, and making a difference. The essential questions we'll be considering are these. What does it look like and feel like when individuals and societies discriminate against and oppress certain groups or individuals? And how have people in the past worked to overcome injustice and oppression? We'll also look at questions about author's craft. How do authors make realistic characters? How does setting influence characters and plot? And in what ways do the events in historical fiction stories connect to history? What is real and what is fiction? You'll be both reading and writing historical fiction in this unit. So you're going to be in book groups, and those book groups are organized by topic. Each topic group contains a text set of texts that are both historical fiction and nonfiction texts. All of the text sets have a social justice conflict from a different era in history. You have a form, and on it you are going to rank your choices of topics from 1 being high to 6 being low. We will do our best to accommodate your choices, but we still need to have balance in the groups. We only have a certain number of books. Your book group will have 5 to 6 people in it. You and your partner, or maybe a trio of you, will read the same book to start with, and probably others in your group will have a different book. So your form looks like this. So the topics basically are workers' rights, and there's potentially 1 or potentially 2 different subtopics within there. There's segregation and civil rights. There's 4 separate topic groups under that. And then there's women and gender stereotypes. There's 1 set of text around that. And then there might be a Japanese internment text set, and I'll talk a little bit about each of these. And then you'll have time to look at the texts that are set up around the room and then fill this out today. The first text set is about workers' rights, and there's 3 novels and a set of supplemental texts about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. This was a terrible fire in a garment factory in 1911. Lots of young women died, and it really kind of galvanized women's organizing, women's unions in the garment worker factory. Another set of texts is about child labor, and so Counting on Grace and Liddy take place in also in mills, spinning cotton mills, wool mills, and they involve child labor. There's also books about farm worker advocacy, and other types of organizing. So there's a variety of worker rights books that could form 1 or 2 book groups. The next topics concern segregation and civil rights in the United States. 1 book group would be about World War II soldiers. These would be Americans who wanted to serve their country and were discriminated against in the military. There's the Navajo code talkers, who formed a secret code, which the Japanese and Germans never broke. It was one of our biggest secret weapons. There's the story of the Triple Nickels, America's first black paratroopers. And there's the story of the Wasps, which were women who flew in the military. They didn't fly in combat, but they flew many domestic missions. All of them had to overcome stereotypes and discrimination to serve their country. Another text set concerns life under Jim Crow laws. These are laws were designed to discriminate and oppress African Americans in our country. And Crow and Stella by Starlight both take place in the South and concern people trying to exercise their rights and people like the Ku Klux Klan opposing them. Mississippi Trial in 1955 is about the murder of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a young man from Chicago who was visiting his relatives in Money, Mississippi, and he was murdered by some white men who got away with the murder. And his murder, many credit with really galvanizing the civil rights movement in our country. There's a group of books about school desegregation, both in Little Rock, Arkansas, and in New Orleans. Many of you know this iconic photo of Elizabeth Bickford and this woman, Hazel, who's yelling at her. She's actually a high school student herself. Fire from the Rock is a fictionalized account of a girl who's in 8th grade and she's considering becoming one of the Little Rock Nine. There's also Warriors Don't Cry, which is a memoir of one of the members of the Little Rock Nine who first integrated Little Rock High School. Then My Mother Was a Cheerleader is about a girl whose mother was one of the women like Hazel over here. She was protesting and yelling at Ruby Bridges, who was the little first grader who was integrating a school in New Orleans. And Lions from Little Rock takes place in Little Rock and is a friendship between a white girl and a black girl. There's a cluster of books about people who are enslaved. The Invention of Wings is an adult book, not a young adult novel. It was on the Oprah Book Club selection at one point. It's the story of Sarah and Angelina Grimke, who were born to slave-holding parents in Charleston and became abolitionists. And it's the story of their relationship with Hetty, nicknamed Handful, who was given to Sarah by her parents as a birthday present on her 11th birthday, and they had a very complicated relationship over the years as Sarah became an abolitionist. There's Chains and Forge, which by Laurie Halsey Anderson. Many of you may have read this already. If you have, I'm sorry, they're off limits. You can read Ashes, which is her third in the trilogy and has just come out. These are the stories of Isabel and Curzon during the American Revolution. They are fighting to help the colonies break from Britain, and the sad irony is that the country will not give them the freedom what the country is seeking from Britain. The last one is Copper Sun, which is the story of Amari, who's stolen from her African village and sold into slavery. And she's a spirited girl who runs away, and you'll have to read the book to find out what happens. The last group concerns women and gender stereotypes. These Shallow Graves is about a rich girl in New York City around the turn of the 20th century, and she's trying to solve a murder of her father, and she has to bump up against all kinds of prohibitions on women in order to do so. A Northern Light is about a girl in upstate New York who wants to go to college, but that's not what her family has planned for her. This also involves a murder mystery. Outrun the Moon and Under a Painted Sky by Stacey Lee are both about Chinese American young women in the West. Outrun the Moon takes place in San Francisco around the time of the earthquake and fire. And Under a Painted Sky is on the Oregon Trail, where a girl is disguised as a boy and running from something in her past. And then One Came Home is about a girl who is trying to solve a mystery about the disappearance of her sister, and again needs to defy some gender stereotypes in order to get that done. The last set isn't really a set yet, because we thought you would have read about Japanese internment last year in social studies. But if you didn't learn about this last year, and you're really interested in it now, we could put a text set together anchored by the hotel at the corner of Bitter and Sweet. This is also an adult novel, but it's about middle school aged kids. It takes place in Seattle during World War II. The girl is Japanese American, and her friend is a Chinese American boy, and their parents' countries are at war with each other. And if their parents knew they were friends, they would be in trouble. But it's a lovely story, and because it takes place in Seattle, it's kind of fun. You can go down to the International District and see some of the places today that are referenced in the book. There's also a number of memoirs from internment: When the Emperor Was Divine, Farewell to Manzanar, Journey to Topaz, and so we could put together a text set if you were interested. Each topic group also has some nonfiction texts, it has some video clips, it has some links on Schoology and internet sources that you can look at. So there's a whole variety of materials. Don't want to spend a lot of time on what we're going to do in the unit, but you should know that you're going to read at least one fiction text, one novel that is. You're going to read at least one nonfiction text. It doesn't have to be a whole book. There are some shorter texts. And you're going to read 3 texts total. That might include a video. If you want an ES, you need to read at least 4 full-length texts. Many of you will read 6 to 10 because some of the texts are quite short. You're going to take notes in your notebook to prepare for discussion in book group. You're going to practice some reading skills and do some exit tickets to show those skills. You're going to contribute to book group discussions on the essential questions. You're going to collaborate on a group project to portray the warriors in your era. And you're going to write a small moment historical fiction narrative. I'm not going to go over the formative and summative assessments, but if you want to look them up later, they'll be posted on Schoology. We'll be rolling them out as we go through the unit. Okay, so finally, we need to fill out your group choice form. You need to write your name and period on the top and circle your teacher's name. You're going to write number 1 on the blank line next to your first choice topic, and number 2 next to your second choice topic, and so on till you've numbered all the topics. Also, on the right-hand side, if you have a choice for a specific book or you've read one of the books before, please write that. If you don't know, don't care, haven't read any of them, leave it blank. This video is on Schoology. You can replay it tonight if you want, and you can go look around at the books that are set up around the room. Happy hunting!